Hello and welcome back to the SAP with Google Cloud podcast. I'm your host, Ghanshyam, and today we are diving into the world of generative AI, modern data solutions, and how they can transform some of the legacy systems. Joining me to illuminate this exciting landscape is Google expert Matt Feigl, a partner engineer. Before we get into these specifics, let's get to know our guest a little better.
Hello, Ghanshyam. I'm a partner engineer, and this means I support our consulting and delivery partners to skill up their teams and launch new solutions. And what brought me to this particular topic of connecting SAP and generative AI is my work on Apogee, which is a suite of management API management tools, and application integration, which is a cloud native iPaaS or integration platform as a service.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. And with that, let's get started. Uh, Matt, my first question. Have you observed any trend where organizations are enthusiastic about GenAI's potential, but struggle to integrate it with their existing SAP systems?
Yes, definitely. We saw something happening in the market and at our customers where everyone is experimenting with Gen AI. The C-suite at large enterprises are funding experiments and they're seeing great potential out of it for improving their business workflows. But at the same time, there's this very big gap between these experiments that are run by very separate teams from the enterprise operational teams and these legacy systems, which have dedicated operational teams whose job it is to keep business critical systems like SAP running smoothly. And this really continues to be very challenging then to connect these magical, promising Gen AI solutions to bring real benefits to these important legacy workflows and applications. Very few of these projects are reaching production in a useful way.
And why is that? What are the specific challenges of integrating SAP and AI?
Well, anybody working in an enterprise landscape, especially with SAP, recognizes that uh, it's very difficult to get data in and out of the SAP ecosystem and other legacy tools. There are years and years of complexity in these systems of internal data source structures, data stored across multiple systems that are carefully balanced and connected together in kind of supported matrices. No standard interfaces between the different versions and different deployments and different places these systems are structured. The SAP systems are highly secure for good reason. So you usually need a lot of technical expertise to build even a single integration into or out of these systems. Now, come to our Gen AI story. You want to connect a Gen AI solution for a single use case that's been vetted and approved by some experimental team. You probably need to spend 4 to 6 weeks talking to the networking teams, working out the authentication details, maybe coding some custom code to like insert and connect to APIs on that legacy system. Maybe some custom protocols that you need to talk to. And then you're very proud of yourself and you launch it after this 4 to 6 weeks and everyone cheers. And then your CTO brings you use case number 2 and you have to go back and start all over again. So this really blocks the ability of new data and Gen AI solutions bringing value to these legacy systems.
That's interesting. SAP data is often siloed and difficult to access. How does application integration address these challenges to make SAP data more accessible and usable for various applications and processes?
Well, Google brought out a cloud native integration platform as service, which we call application integration. And the core the core use of application integration is to solve these technical aspects of integrations very quickly in a way that can be reused and repeated. So it is a low code, no code interface to speed up the creation of new integrations. But when you talk about an SAP system that you need to connect to and trying to connect it to GenAI, I think the real use value is this, that you create the connector once, which simplifies and helps you reuse the networking and the authentication aspects of it. The connector understands the underlying protocols so that your developer team doesn't need to. The connector identifies the tables and schemas that you're going to use and pulls those things into use for your integration developer team. This way, your integration developer team can minimize the amount of SAP knowledge they need to make these integrations, right? You have one trusted domain expertise team from your SAP team help create this connector the first time, and now
Mhm.
multiple sets of integration developers can start creating these integrations in the low-code environment. You definitely need the SAP connector expertise for the initial setup, right? When we did the reference architecture we built, we worked with our SAP experts to build it. But then, um, but these are just kind of human organizational and knowledge topics that you need to bring to the project. They're not technical barriers. They're just making sure you have the right people attached to the project to understand how it works. And what I was really happily surprised about when I was building this demo together with our SAP experts was I was preparing to handcraft a lot of JSON to send to the SAP gateway. I was reading about what those schemas looked like and how I needed to do that. And what I realized is once we built the connector, it had put and told it which tables we wanted access to. It pulled those schemas into the design interface for me, and all I needed to do was use the integration developer tooling, which I was already used to do the data mapping into the preset SAP formats. We did build a reference architecture to show this in action.
Mhm.
I'm happy to show it off now if you like.
Yeah, definitely. We would love to, see the demo. But before that, could you please elaborate about the specific use cases you find for integrating SAP with AI technologies? What ML models do you use, and what are the benefits to businesses?
We picked some reference architectures that were well-known use cases where it's proven that GenAI can add some value to these enterprise processes, but we're often not seeing them actually embedded in reaching the business processes themselves. The first one we chose was purchase order processing, which is a big complex flow for any organization, and you could map many of these same tools to invoice processing for incoming invoices. And here we took incoming purchase orders from in a global organization where they could be coming in from many languages, many locations, and we
Mhm.
used Translate AI tools, which isn't an LLM, but it's a translation tools, which is an AI powered translation, to translate them
Mhm.
into a common language, English, so we could get things in Spanish or Hindi or German and get them all translated into the same processing language which we use at the company. And then we use Document AI and also an LLM interpretation of Document AI to pull the entities out of those purchase orders. So without complex training, we were able to pull out the entities in a predictable, successful way, like what are the things that are being ordered, right? And maybe sometimes a very complex order form. What are the delivery instructions? Are there special delivery instructions that we need to tackle? Any sort of things that are commonly causing friction or problem in the ordering process. And we were able to go through a fairly simple flow with application integration, pulling in some information, passing these through the various LM tools or document AI tools, talking to our SAP system for some grounding or accuracy verification, and then finally
Mhm.
executing or creating records so that other human beings can go approve and agree the execution in SAP or any of our other ordering systems. So that was the first one. And the second one we
Okay.
built was around customer intake and enrichment, where you
Mhm.
might be getting you might be getting customer information from many flows, right? A customer input form where a customer requests contact for something, but you could also have a marketing campaign which is pulling in partial information about customers, a chatbot that a customer is using that is creating this record for us. So multiple places where this customer information could be coming. And we started by we simply ask our LM for additional enrichment to qualify the lead, add useful information to it, and streamline the work of our sales team. Like, what's the size of this company? What's their recent business drivers or stock changes? Based on the customer's title or the things that they've asked us for, what do you recommend our sales team do? What's the next best action? There's a lot of potential here, including like deduplicating and aligning the customer request, right? Maybe that customer already exists in our system. We don't want to create a new record. We want to attach this request to the existing record. And we did all of that through a flow with the LLMs and grounding and things like that to SAP. And there's a third one that a colleague of mine is working on, which we hope to see soon, which are like detection of safety issues. It's a very common SAP module for safety tracking, safety issues, especially on manufacturing floors or workspaces. So we can run incoming video footage from a factory floor through Gemini, and then we detect safety issues. Oh, we also then enrich it with what are the safety rules for this factory, a PDF or other sort of safety guidelines for working with these materials or this work floor. Then we can detect safety issues and create safety reports for corrective action. That one's still in development, but the LLM pieces are all there, and just using the application integration development flows that we have to talk to SAP, it's just a matter of wiring together those pieces in the same way of the other two.
Right. Those are some great use cases, I must say. And with that, I think let's jump into the demo and see how it works.
Here you see the SAP environment we're going to actually use for our demo combining SAP, Gemini, and application integration. We're going to load incoming customer entries into the business partner table. Business partner table is used for many different relationships that you might have in SAP. In this case, we're going to use the customer object. Notice that there are not a lot of extra information fields about comments or extra metadata we can stuff into this business partner table. In real use, everyday use, companies start using things like these extra name fields to store extra metadata like descriptions, classifications of the customers. So we'll see that in action when we reach the end of our demo and need to parse the input from Gemini into this customer data. We'll be using these extra fields. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the connectors we'll be using to actually make our connections to and from SAP. We're using application integration and its connectors. You can see that we already have an ERP connection and an SAP gateway connection. We're just going to walk through the process of creating one. We have a wide variety of connectors we can choose from other classic legacy applications or databases like Oracle to software as a service tools like Salesforce or Workday or other Google Cloud services. We can also choose from a variety of SAP connectors. Today we're going to choose the SAP ERP connector. This is where we consult with our SAP experts to understand the tables we're connecting to get the authentication accounts we're going to use, and other necessary things like that. In the end, we have a connector running where we have things like the instances that it's going to talk to. We have our authentication stored in a secret manager within Google Cloud. We have the location, the host addresses we're going to talk to. All of that is stored in the connector so that the integration developers don't need to know about it at all. For this demo, we're going to be taking incoming customer information and putting it into the business partner table in SAP. Our inputs could be coming from anywhere, any other systems at the company, manual entry, a phone bank, a chatbot. To keep this simple, we're going to have a simple customer entry form where someone tells us what they're looking for. And to process this information into SAP and enrich it, we're going to need something a little stronger than document AI or translation. So what is out there for options we can use? Well, in Google Cloud, we have a model garden where we can choose from a variety of Google's models, open source models, third-party models that we can use to make transformations, inferences, generate content to fit our needs. We've already gotten started testing some prompts that might solve this business problem we're having of how to process the customer's information. So outside of application integration, in the model garden area, we've been playing around with some prompts to ask the generative AI to give us the information we need based on certain factors: company name, what the person's asking for, could be other sales orders that they've already made. And we're asking for this information back in so that we can operate on it with a program. We have also some other useful tools here where we can ground the search on factual data. We can ground it on Google search, or for example, we can ground this on a Vertex AI data store where we have created some corporate data that is our source of truth. But essentially, we play around in the Vertex AI until we have a prompt that does what we want, and then we go use it in an integration. So now we have the inputs, the form, and SAP where we want it to go. And as we saw previously, an SAP connector, which allows us to send information to SAP easily. How do we wire this together? If we go into the application integration tool, we can see a variety of integrations we've worked on. And here's the customer validation flow we've written. So we have our inputs from the form. We have the enrichment we want to do with it in the generative AI model, and we want to land this in SAP. How do we wire these three things together? Let's take a look at this integration that pulls these pieces together. We have created a variable called our prompt template. This is the content we've experimented with in Gemini, and we're going to take the incoming form and map the company name to it. We could have a variety of other variables that go into this. We take a mapping step where we craft the information about where we take the form input, we craft the information about where we want to run the generative AI model and reach it, and we resolve the template to map the information in from the form into our template. After that point, it's very easy just to connect to Gemini, ask it to take that incoming information. You can see that Gemini has given us a sample payload with the information it needs. It needs this path information and this request body. We've mapped to that during the data mapping. And we pass this information on, and we have it take the action to generate some content for us. The outcoming content, we then need to process the JSON. At the moment, we're using two steps to that. We're using a JSON function to rationalize the JSON and get it in a format for us. And then we're also adding a little bit of JavaScript in this case because Gemini is giving us a little bit of additional text that we don't need to work with. Now we come back into a data mapping form, and we're going to use the data mapper to map that company name into the payload, the description that was generated by our Gemini form into the company descriptions in SAP. You notice that we're chunking the information into 40 characters here. That's an interesting limitation of the way that SAP stores its data in very small fields. And we also add the customer data type. All of the things that need to go into this SAP payload. Because the SAP connector is able to talk to the SAP database, we can ask it to pull the entities. We've asked it to pull information from the business partner. And for the create operation, the connector has pre-created this variable for us, showing all the fields that we're going to need to fill, or that we have the options to fill, and making it very easy to work with them. Now when we fill out the form, we're going to trigger this webhook. I'm going to fill this in. We're going to use the name of a Dutch company I know. and I am a partner engineer for this company. Now let's take a look at what happened when we execute the function. We can see that the function succeeded. What happened? We can actually walk through every step and examine the variables if we want to. But the important thing is that we got a payload from the form. We mapped that into the prompt. Ta-da. And we passed that to Gemini. Gemini then just gave us a response in the format that we were asking. As you notice, there's a little extra stuff here that we're going to strip out. We strip that information out, and once we've stripped it out, we map this into the ORO database and pass it successfully into SAP.
Wow, that was a great demo. Thank you, Matt. Now, moving on, Google Cloud offers a wide array of SAP connectors. Can you give us an overview of these connectors and how they are specifically designed to tackle the challenges of integrating SAP with modern data and AI solutions?
Of course. Connectors are a shared infrastructure piece in application integration, and this makes it possible to talk to almost any Google product, a software as a service running somewhere else or on any cloud wherever it's running, or legacy applications like SAP running on-premise or in any cloud. Once you create your connector and create the networking path and the authentication and all of those sort of fundamental infrastructure layers to talk to SAP through the connector, many of your integrations can use them. So this hugely speeds up the development of new integrations once you have that first connector in place. You might have 4 or 5 integration developers or teams using that same connector. So in these examples that we showed, we used several SAP connectors that were created once and then reused, as well as the connectors to Vertex AI for the generative AI capabilities. So zooming into SAP, we saw that we have an SAP ERP connector, which lets you do seamless interactions with your SAP ERP system, reading tables, executing BAPI functions, things like that. We also have an SAP trigger, we have a trigger to start integrations that uses the ABAC SDK. So that helps you get real-time integration of the events. If you have a master update, like customer or product changes in your SAP database, we can trigger other integration flows that send information outside of SAP in the same way. We have the gateway connector, so you can connect to any of the common OData services. Something's running on S4, HANA, things like that. And we are continually launching more. Probably every month we're launching a few more for SAP and other legacy systems.
Okay, that's interesting and good to know. Now, what about security and privacy? So there are certain security and privacy concerns that are crucial when dealing with sensitive SAP data. How does application integration ensure the security and privacy of data during integration process, and what measures are in place to mitigate the potential risk?
I think I would break this down into answer of 3 areas. At the most broad, we have Google Cloud's native security infrastructure, right? Application integration is simply Google Cloud's native iPaaS. And it builds on top and uses all of the foundational GCP infrastructure, the Google managed encryption keys, secure network paths, all these things. If I zoom into the second layer, within application integration, you have the ability to mask variables and log entries as your security team specifies, right? Like, certain things will be put into the logs after an execution. If your security team says, no, this is not allowed, data residency requirements or data privacy or very, very sensitive internal corporate data should not go into logs, even if we trust Google Cloud, you have the ability to mask those variables and log entries so that in a variety of ways. And then I think The third layer down would be within the connector itself to SAP, right? The connection is specified during your connection setup, and it uses your approved networking, your approved authentication by your SAP team. So it's following those standards. And then every developer who uses that connector is automatically following your approved network paths and standards. So you're not like having to do code reviews on multiple different SAP code integration projects. It's all handled in that one space. You have one space to enforce and verify those standards. So I hope that helps the 3 steps. Google Clouds.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay.
So for organizations that are considering implementing application integration for their SAP landscape, what are some of the key factors or consideration they should keep in mind to ensure a successful integration project?
Well, from an organizational perspective, you want to make sure while this makes it much easier to make these integrations, you want to have involvement and support from both the application integration, the application platform team, and your SAP internal organizations. You'll need some domain expertise from the SAP team because your integration team probably doesn't know what these tables are or what to talk to. And then from someone needs to understand what's in those underlying tables and the relationships to domain specific things. And then I think you also need a little bit of experience with Google Cloud networking and authentication and how to manage that. That's a pretty lightweight group, but you just don't want to forget about those 3 things. Then really to get started, rather simply, the documentation shows you how to start with application integration. So if you're a Google Cloud customer already, you can simply turn it on in the console and try some first experiments. Now, I'm a partner engineer working with our partner network. So if you're a customer watching this, and this is your first time experimenting with application integration, I highly encourage you to team up with an experienced partner because they will help speed up your experiments and they will speed up your decision process to use this tool. And then once you decide the tool, you can either do it yourself or hopefully you continue to work with a trusted partner on it.
That's great. Thank you, Matt, for the enlightening discussion. To wrap up, what are the first steps customers should take to embark on this transformative journey? How can they get started with implementing these technologies?
Yeah, application integration has a free tier. So if you already have a Google Cloud project, you can just turn it on and start with some light experiments. To help speed that up, we will share some links to the application integration discussion community, and also some useful sample integrations that we have on GitHub that kind of jumpstart and run a first project.
That's great. We'll be sure to include those resources in the show notes. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today and sharing your expertise on application integration and how to use the SAP connectors to connect SAP applications to other Google Cloud services. This has been an incredibly enlightening conversation. And before we sign off, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insightful discussions on SAP and Google Cloud. Until next time, happy cloud computing.